Shabbat Shalom, friends. So grateful that you've joined us on this beautiful morning. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Of all of the magnificent and magical moments in our story of creation as given to us by our ancestors, that verse, maybe above all, has invited more thought, more commentary, more puzzling, and more wonderment than maybe almost any other. What does it mean to be created in God's image? It is the foundational verse, Genesis 1, verse 26, the foundational verse for all of Jewish mysticism, wondering what it is to be a human being fashioned in an image that we cannot see, that we are not even allowed to fully imagine. And so we are left to wonder. And in this quest for imagining what it is to be made in a divine image, we tiny little people inhabiting this remote corner of the universe, I think, as do so many, of Adam, who was created alone as one person. And though our Torah has so much to teach us, some of which remains so utterly mysterious and veiled to this very day, and that's, let's be honest, what keeps us coming back to it, there is much about this concept of Adam alone that is to remind us how precious each one of us is. And our rabbis in the Talmud, in Mishnah Sanhedrin 4, teach Adam was created alone, to teach us that anyone who destroys one person, it is as if he destroyed an entire world. And conversely, Adam was created alone to teach us that anyone who sustains or lifts up one soul, it is as if she sustained an entire world. And this was also done with the hope of maintaining peace among people, so that no one person will say to another, "My father was greater than your father." So that no one should be able to say, "My father was greater than your father," since we are all descended from one common source. So how do we honor that notion of each of us, as the rabbis go on to say, being in a mindset, a heart set, where we can stand proudly and say, this world was created for me? How do we get back to the garden, as it were, remembering or imagining what it was like for Adam in our sacred myth to be the only person on earth? What responsibility does he have? Although we notice magically, and it's for another sermon that I hope to give soon, that in this first version of the creation myth, there is actually a composite human being, male and female. God created them. But this fused being that is at this point in our sacred narrative alone, what is their task? Yes, they are to be fruitful and multiply, as we heard that first commandment going by. But what I think we are bidden most to do is to look at these opening verses of our Torah and listen. Because this part of our Torah, as so much later on is as well, is suffused with the voice of God. And I think it is in that mandate where we are invited, exhorted, commanded to be most like the Holy One. This notion of God speaking to create the world. What an extraordinary concept. God said, Rabbi Dr. Lieber of blessed memory says, "The divine word that begins the Torah shatters the cosmic silence and signals the beginning of a new order." God said means that God created the world with words. However we hear this story of the myth of creation, it is so essential and crucial from the opening notes that the word is what can create or destroy a world. We have just come from the high holidays, particularly Yom Kippur, where the preponderance of confessions are offered because of the transgression of words. When we use our words for good or for ill, we are immediately taking our place in the story of creation. It is said that we should taste our words before offering them. And in a beautiful quote from the late and great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, he reminded us that speech has power. Words do not fade. What starts out as a sound ends in a deed. From the opening moments of our Torah, we are invited to be like the Holy One, using speech for good. The last couple of weeks in our world of current events, if you can sort out anything from the enormity of the noise that invades us every day, which Shabbat is supposed to be a respite from, there have been some great accountabilities for the sin of words that destroy on both extremes of the political spectrum. So this is hardly a political takedown, because it seems that people with big platforms and huge responsibilities are often the ones whose words carry the most weight. We have seen people with huge internet platforms being held to account for the sin of misinformation, such that families that lost children in the most terrible and violent way possible were hounded and harassed for years, told that their grief was not real, that they were actors on behalf of lobbyists, the most searing and horrifying words possible. And an enormous financial judgment was handed down to the person at the top of that scheme, to the tune of almost $1 billion. Words matter. And here in Los Angeles, the other end of the political spectrum, so it affects everybody potentially. We are all from the same origin, with the same propensity for making terrible, horrible mistakes with our words and our hands. But with words here in Los Angeles, an enormous uproar when an audio tape was leaked a year later of people in such positions of privilege and power, unleashing terrible racist vitriol at their colleagues, at the children of their colleagues, and no one was spared. Almost every ethnic group, even of the same ethnic group as these political leaders, some of whom received votes for mayor from people in this house. Really, really shocking, and a reminder how easily careers and lives and families and worlds can be utterly upended and destroyed when we take our God-given ability to speak and our words destroy. Careers have ended, reputations ruined, people that thought they were in private places who should have known better, tearing apart their constituents, their colleagues, supposedly their friends. I imagine that all of us, at one point or other, have regretted the words that have left our mouths. This new year begins with a reminder that we come from a holy place, that we were spoken into the universe, and that we are most godlike when we too speak, and when we use our words to create good worlds. I imagine that some of us have also sat in rooms and overheard things that were unkind or much worse, and been stunned or bullied into silence, unable to take on the people who have used their words for hurt. And so we have been complicit in the hurt. It is a new year, and we are reminded with these opening words of the Torah that words can lead to beauty, to harmony, to the refrain of, "This is very, very good." I'd like to make a pledge myself today to consider the words that I'm privileged to share, to learn from examples on all ends of our political spectrum, all ends of our religious spectra, and all of the impetus within ourselves. We are created with the propensity for good. Our mystical tradition absolutely doubles down on that, but also acknowledges that each one of us has the Yetzer Hara within us, the propensity to make bad, even evil, hurtful choices. When we rise above that propensity, then we are acting in God's image, for good, not for ill, for creating, not for destroying, for blessing, and not for curse. Please, friends, in our small platforms, in our relationships with one another, in our meetings, in our community, in our choices, let us act with the best information that we can find and use our words for tov, for good, just as this creation story invites us to do. Shabbat Shalom, and may our words be a blessing.